Good morning, everyone. Hi, my name's Jenny Whitener. I'm the CEO of Bridge Innovate, and it's my pleasure to welcome you today to Who's in Charge, the board or the executive director. It's going to be a great session today with our guest, Glenda Hicks. She'll be sharing some insights with us on today's program. So as we're getting started and welcoming everyone to today's program, if you would do me a kind favor and introduce yourself to Glenda, our guest presenter. Just go into the chat, say hello, and type your name and your organization. So if I were going to jump in, I would say it's Jenny from BI. So if you guys would just join me in doing that, it's always nice to know who we're talking with today in the pandemic realm and engaging all virtually. So please do go into the chat and say hello. We'd love to know that you are here. So for today's program, who's in charge, the board or the executive director? Let's get going. Thank you, Bridget. Welcome to you. Glad you're here. So others are coming in. Thank you, Daniel. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our Inspire series. This series we launched about a year ago. It's where we bring in thought-provoking leaders to share their insights and innovation around the field of innovation, leadership, and change. It's exciting for us to do that and to give back to our community and sharing their insights. And so we're excited to have Glenda with us today. Let's continue on. In terms of Bridge Innovate, those who are new to our community, welcome. Probably the best way to get to know us is to know what we believe, right? We believe that partnerships are built on integrity. We are proud and a believer in collective wisdom, and that's a lot of what the Inspire series is all about. We're a proud believer in human-centered design, and we believe that creates a competitive advantage. We also think that looking into the future and exploring future trends and those emerging disruptions is critical for creating bold strategy. And we believe in giving back to our community through our innovation for good efforts. So that's a bit about us. Let's continue on. Today, we are very, very excited to welcome Glenda Hicks. She is the owner of Glenda Y. Hicks Consulting, CPA. She and I, we were just talking, I think Glenda and I have known each other for maybe 10 to 15 years. We've engaged in the community of consulting with nonprofits all throughout the Southeast. And so it's our excitement to have her with us today. She is certified with BoardSource. She is a CPA by training. She has a tremendous background in the financial sector with holding senior executive roles with universities and other major players as controller. She is also very experienced in creating gamification tools. And you'll hear about that in a little bit with her new series, the C Impact program, which is now available, working with nonprofits and boards and exploring some of the issues there. And she'll be talking with us a little bit about that today. But it's our great pleasure to invite Glenda today to share with us some words of wisdom around who's in charge. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Glenda.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jenny. I'm so excited to be here with you all and to share in this opportunity as we talk about the board staff partnership. First, I want to confirm that you all can see my screen and it's in full presentation. All right, thank you. So our agenda for today is to cover the characteristics of the board staff partnership, and then I'll share some insights on the challenges and some solutions around it, sharing with you some stories I've encountered with clients I've served. And if we have some time on the back end, we'll entertain a few questions, and if not, my email will be provided so you can reach out to me directly afterward. And also the recording will be shared with the participants, and then we'll close out with some announcements from Jenny and her team. So as she was saying, I do have a game out, 501c Impact, and I created it because of things that I saw on the consulting side and working with organizations and really helping the board and the executive develop a stronger partnership and create a high-performing board and really drill down to what's the root issue? You know, you have all these symptoms. I need good board members. I need better engagement. I need better attendance. And there's all this litany of symptoms that occur, but what's really driving that? And so I've learned in the nonprofit sector, they love to learn by doing. And so I wanted an experiential opportunity for folks to really engage and see the impact of the decision making or the lack thereof around the board table. So that's what that game is all about. And I invite you to learn more about it at your leisure. But today we're going to dive into the board staff partnership and a little bit of a different twist. And I'm going to come at it from a leadership perspective. So I'm really going to focus on, the board staff partnership in the context of stronger leadership. And so I'm introducing today by putting up a slide about a nationally recognized nonprofit consultant, Joan Gary. Many of you may know of her, have seen her work, seen her articles. But I put this up because I love her tagline, which is because nonprofits are messy. And I chose this graphic to pair with it because I think first and foremost, it's cute. It's funny, it brings a smile to our face, but it also represents that nonprofit management can become messy. And one of these messy areas is the board staff partnership. And the more I've gotten engaged with clients and really drilled down deeper, I now truly understand what this statement means. They can be messy as you work to build your capacity. So what I want to use as my talking point today is this slide from BoardSource, and one of the resources they provide us as consultants that shows the 4 key areas or characteristics of having an effective board staff partnership. And they are having a shared understanding of the mission and the vision, having clear roles and responsibilities, having an open and honest communication, and having two-way evaluation. And so I'm going to speak about each of these today and give you some insights, share some stories. But I want to start in just a moment with a poll. I'm going to launch a very quick poll just to get you engaged on another level and just ask you to select which one of these 4 represents the area in which you've experienced the most challenges in the board staff partnership area. And I recognize we have a mix of folks today. We have people that serve on boards as board directors, or you serve in an officer role. You might be the chief executive of a nonprofit, or you're also, you may be a consultant. And so we have a variety of folks, but there's things that you've encountered firsthand in working with your agency or in consulting with agencies that represent and I'll just say it, the friction that can sometimes exist between the board and the chief executive, or the board chair in particular and the chief executive. And I submit that it's typically in one of these 4 areas. There's not a clear and understanding around the vision and the mission. It's not shared. People are coming onto the board without properly being oriented or trained or shown what's expected of them. And so there's confusion, there's disengagement, there's conversations that need to be held with different individuals to hold them accountable for their performance. And those open and honest communications are not occurring, or they're occurring in very disrespectful ways. And then the two-way evaluation, where both the board and the chief executive has an opportunity to evaluate the other and to take account of how things are playing out. So I'm going to advance to this next slide and launch this poll and just ask you to choose one of these areas of where you have encountered the most challenges as it relates to the board staff partnership. And I'll just give you a couple of seconds and then we'll see the results and we'll move on into the content. Okay, seeing a pattern here, most definitely. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and end the poll and share the results. So hopefully each of you can see these results in terms of clear roles and responsibilities, winning out, taking the lead. And this is true for me as well. So let me stop sharing that and we'll go on to our presentation, and I'll highlight that again when I get to that slide. So I'm going to give you a gimme on this one. The answer is leadership capacity. So when we get to the end of the presentation, I'll have a question for you, and I want you to give me the answer by typing it into the chat box. So just keep in mind leadership capacity. In this first area of having a shared understanding of mission and vision, you can see the challenges and some of the suggested solutions on the screen. But what I would share with you about this is, oftentimes people are serving on boards for a variety of reasons, and they are committed to the mission, but sometimes the mission is not relevant anymore and it needs to be revisited. Or the organization doesn't have a vision statement that serves as that North Star to really understand why are we doing this work and what are we really hoping to achieve in a perfect world. Or each individual board member has a different interpretation of the mission. Or the executive director is pursuing opportunities and funding in areas that are not congruent with the mission. And so you find yourself in this divergent situation where you're not on the same page. And that can lead to disengagement from board members. They don't know, what the true direction is, what they're supposed to do, how is it interpreted. And a good opportunity in this area is to seek stakeholder input as one option, to just find out, what do our stakeholders think we're doing and think we should do, and how do they evaluate how we're doing it. So running focus groups, a lot of times we think of this in the context of strategic planning, but it doesn't have to be confined to that moment in time. Getting feedback from employees, from funders, from clients that you serve to really get that shared understanding of, are we doing the right things? Are we doing it in the right way? Is the mission statement still relevant? Another area is in generative discussion, and this is something that a lot of boards struggle with. Excuse me. And that, you have around the table, typically a lot of leaders, and they're used to leading in their organization. They're used to finding solutions quickly, and they're not used to struggling and grappling with an issue and really just framing what it is we're trying to address. And so I often advise organizations to take time on your agenda to have a generative discussion about a matter or an issue that the director perhaps has brought to the board. Because a lot of this partnership is about the director sharing concerns and issues that he or she is seeing in the work that they're doing on a daily basis, being on the front line. And they want the board to dive deeper into that and take a look at it and figure out the implications and where the organization should go in the future in the long term. So the leadership component is about not thinking you know it all, but reaching out to those who can provide input and also getting on the same page. And the board staff partnership is really around articulating what it is the organization currently does, bringing in staff or senior management to those board meetings and sharing what you're doing, what progress you're making, and how the programs look, and having the board members attend a program so they can see it firsthand and really be able to share that information. So moving to clear roles and responsibilities, which is the area that received the most votes in our quick poll, this is the same thing I see, and it really causes confusion on the part of organizations, and it manifests itself in a myriad of ways with difficulties in recruiting people to the board, or getting your board to fundraise in terms of resource development, getting people aligned on the right committees. There's typically a lack of clarity, and many board members are not provided with a list of expectations, maybe an agreement that they sign, which is not really legally binding, but at least holds them accountable to some level of expectation. Having position descriptions, these are things we think of in your company, in your day job. But when you serve on a board, it's very important that people understand what it is they need to do so that they can lead in the best way. And I have an organization I'm working with now, and as I was conducting interviews of various board members, one of them shared with me that when she became secretary, she didn't know what that meant and what she was supposed to do. So she Googled it. And I found that interesting. I thought it was wonderful that she cared enough to want to know what she was supposed to do, that she took it upon herself to start with Google, our ubiquitous encyclopedia of knowledge, but also that the organization lacked that direction for her. And it comes back to ensuring that your folks are equipped and knowledgeable and prepared to execute their roles and responsibilities in a way that's meaningful, that's aligned with their fiduciary responsibility, that allows them to contribute their skills in the best way, and that supports the CEO. Because oftentimes my clients tell me, we want to support the director, we want to give him or her what they need, and yet they don't know what that is. So it's very important that we look to this area in particular to create that structure that allows individuals to understand as you're recruiting them and as you onboard them and as they begin to execute the responsibilities, that they know what they are and how to fulfill them. In the area of open and honest communication, this was really interesting to me because, again, you have typically individuals around the board table that are in leadership roles at their companies, or they're moving into leadership, they're trying to train up to become leaders. And yet, when they cross that threshold into the boardroom, they leave a lot of those skills at the door. And in particular, communication skills. I coach organizations and individuals on how to have conversations. I have executive directors that want to talk to their board members about individual situations, and they're fearful of it. They don't know how to approach it with confidence and professionally in a way that won't offend the board member or cause them to quit. And quite honestly, having a board member walk away is not the worst thing in the world. It's really a blessing sometimes because you recognize that this is not a good fit, or this is not the right time for them to serve. Many things are going on within their life or their company that really prevents them from giving 100%. And it's better that you know that and that you address it directly and honestly and openly so that you can make it easier for both of you and you can get the right people that you need at your organization serving in the right seats. But some of the little things are just being able to contact the board chair, for example. I have clients that talk about not being able to reach their board chair. And a best practice is that the chair and the executive are in constant communication, at least weekly in some form, maybe through a text message or a quick email, maybe a 5-minute phone call. But there's so many things going on in an organization where the chief executive needs that expertise, not just of the board chair, but of other members around the board table. I was working with a client recently where they've actually asked us to provide additional coaching services and consulting so that the chief executive feels that she can reach out to board members individually for their expertise. I mean, after all, when you seek board members, you go after them for various skill sets they possess. And once they get on the board, the chief executive wants to know that he or she can reach out to that individual and leverage that skill set and ask questions and get direction as she is managing the day-to-day operations. So being able to have that around the table is helpful. Another situation is where folks just don't know one another. And I was talking to a client just this week where in an interview, she was saying, you know, I've introduced myself, but they don't know me. I don't know who that, she's introduced herself, but she doesn't know them. She doesn't know where they work, what they do, what skills they bring. And so that makes for very ineffective deliberation and collaboration when the board hasn't developed itself as a unit to where you don't just come together for a 90-minute or 2-hour meeting and, work your way through the agenda real quickly and then dismiss, but that you truly engage and interact and understand one another. And so some of the solutions I've incorporated in this area are making sure the chair understands their responsibility in facilitating a meeting, making sure everyone's voice is heard, everyone has an opportunity to speak up, having those difficult conversations with individual board members. If you see they're not coming to meetings on a regular basis, if you see they're not chiming in and volunteering to serve on a committee or to chair a committee, if they are not prepared for meetings, all of this plays into the overall effectiveness or ineffectiveness of the board. Personality training is high on my list. There's some examples there on the screen: DISC, Clifton Strengths Finder, Myers-Briggs, many of you are familiar with. These are things that a lot of these folks do in their own companies, and it's valued. It's part of development. But yet when you get to a board, you don't necessarily think of these things as part of keeping your board equipped with what it needs so that it can best work in partnership with the executive director. And when you talk about who's leading, who's in charge, it's hard to answer that when you don't know what you're supposed to do, and when you're not able to communicate with each other in a professionally effective manner. And these personality trainings allow the board to get to know itself. One of the other tools I like to use, in fact, was introduced to me by a client, is personal user manuals. One of their employees had come to the company having completed one elsewhere, and then they did it as an activity. And then I adopted it to use with boards because it allows individual board members to share what's the best way to reach me, what really is frustrating for me in terms of having a one-on-one relationship with someone, in terms of communicating. How do I prefer to discuss matters? And I'll share this information through my email. If you all reach out to me, I can provide a link directly to the source that I use. But I just found it really unique and very successful with the clients that I've used it with, to help them to understand how to reach out to one another and work more collaboratively, understanding the nuances and quirks that we each have. And in the last category, it's really about that two-way evaluation process and holding yourself accountable. Oftentimes we expect the executive director to do everything. He or she wears so many hats, and they're quite honestly overwhelmed and exhausted in most cases. And yet they still will evaluate the executive director on many things that the board should have done itself. And you'll find, at least I find, that many nonprofits have not had an extensive self-evaluation. They have not undergone an assessment that says, do we have these policies in place? Do we have these procedures in place? How do we hold each other accountable? Do we understand these concepts? How has the work that we've performed really made an impact on the success of the organization? And when they engage in these kinds of self-assessments, it's really revealing how much they need to work on. I mean, I've encountered organizations where the board says, we're not really sure what we're supposed to do. And I submit that if you just managed your own selves, you would be busy quite often. But in doing that, you would allow yourselves to have a structure and an effectiveness that then positions you to deal with the issues, to look at the strategy of the organization, to support the director in a meaningful way, to be that go-to resource when he or she needs it, and to really hold yourself to the same standard that you're holding the executive. The other side of that coin is I've encountered organizations where they haven't evaluated the executive. So the executive is managing day-to-day operations, but really doesn't have a sense of how well am I doing? What do you really expect me to achieve in this next year? You need to know as a board that these are some things I need in terms of my own development or my own sanity. And so that two-way evaluation where the board evaluates itself with input from the director and the board evaluates the director allows the two to really hold one another accountable, work from the same songbook, sing from the same songbook, work from the same strategy plan, have the same goals in mind, and move in the same direction toward that North Star. So putting those things in place are key. And it even can trickle down to something as simple as evaluating certain meetings. Periodically throughout the year, you could send an evaluation to your board members just to take a pulse on how effective was that meeting. Did you feel like your voice was heard? Did we respect your time? Did you receive the materials in advance? And all of this comes back to that board staff partnership and leadership that should be exhibited in order to build a strong team. So my last slide is going back to where we started, which is the question that I provided you the answer to. And my question is, what characteristic drives the answer for who's in charge? So if you'll just take a moment and type into the chat box what I provided early on, see if you recall the answer. What characteristic drives the answer for who's in charge? All right, here it comes. I see it coming through. You all are rock stars. You get the A+ for today. The answer is leadership capacity. And with leadership capacity, there is a title that comes. And obviously, there's some prescriptive documentation about who is in charge. It could be the board chair, the treasurer, the chief executive. So there's definitely titles and prescribed authority. But with that authority comes responsibility. And that responsibility is to follow through. It's to know what you signed up for. As an organization, it's to ensure that people know what they're getting into. A lot of times we sugarcoat what it means to serve on a board and how much time commitment is going to be involved. All of these things come back in my mind to a leadership aptitude, a leadership capacity. There's accountability that needs to be enforced. And then there's humility. You know, being able to step back when we facilitate strategic training and we set out these rules of engagement. We like the participants to provide those rules, but we also provide others. And one of them is knowing when to step up and when to step back. And stepping back means, you know, quieting yourself sometimes and allowing others to speak their opinion. Being prepared is critical. If you receive packages in advance, read the material. I have a client whose organization was held accountable with a charge brought against the board because the adjudicating authority said, you weren't prepared. You didn't ask questions. You didn't go to meetings. You didn't read the minutes. So how could you have exercised your fiduciary responsibility? Again, to me, this is leadership. And in the end, when you have that framework, it allows you to do what I call the fun stuff. And that's the last 4 items on here. Be creative, be innovative, exercise foresight, and then design solutions. And that's what I love about my alignment with Bridge Innovate as a partner with them, because this is the tenets, the pillars of their organization, helping nonprofits and for-profit organizations as well to be creative in identifying solutions and innovative and having foresight and designing what that solution should look like, which is not always the first idea you come up with. So at the end of the day, it's who should take the lead. And when you see who should take the lead, it's asking, is that person sufficiently equipped? And if not, that's where implementing those strategies comes into play and building a framework around what do we need to equip each other to be successful. And with that, I'll ask my team if there's any questions that have come through the chat box that we may have time for. If not, I'll definitely respond to you through email, and then we'll close out with a few announcements.
Glenda, thank you. That was absolutely fantastic. Thanks so much. And I'll just invite our participants. They've been chatting throughout this session saying, oh, I love this. This is great. So Luke, if you could just come off of that just for 1 second. I want to see if there are any questions. If you go back to seeing Glenda, any questions from the panelists really quickly? I know we have just a minute left. Okay. And one of the things I was very excited about is to hear the emphasis on, you know, role clarity and the two-way self-assessments. John saying, I love this content and the 30-minute format. So lots of accolades. And again, as Glenda said, we will make sure that you have her email address when we send out the recording of today's session. So please do follow up with Glenda. She's a wealth of knowledge and information. Thank you so much, Glenda, for being with us today and sharing your insights on who's in charge and all the expertise you bring to nonprofit consulting and nonprofit leadership. So what's coming up next at Bridge Innovate? We have a briefing coming up, the future of work on May the 14th. We've had a number of colleagues working on what that's going to look like in the future, doing a number of Foresight Scouts trends and briefs, and you'll be getting a full report on that on May the 14th. We also have a great student program that's free this year for students ages 4th grade through 12th grade, a graphic design challenge with the concept around unity. So the students are challenged with creating a design that shares the message of unity either for their school or their community. So great judges coming in on that student design challenge. It's conducted virtually. So get your students involved in that this summer. Also, tips for launching effective strategy design in June. And then Blake coming in with multiplying leaders, how the best leaders create leaders, one of our other capability partners. So join us again. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. See you soon. Bye now.